Recovery in South Africa's construction sector slowed down in the fourth quarter. The construction index fell by 6 points to 36, and that after hitting a four-year high of 42 points in the third quarter. Increased competition and low profitability amongst the reasons for slowed construction activity. And joining us to chat about this is Kees Bruggemans. He's consulting economist at FNB. Kees, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. And of course, we've got the same factors coming to bear on this construction sector as a whole. To what extent did the slowdown in the fourth quarter come as any surprise to you?
Well, obviously these things don't run in a straight line. And also we find that not all contributing sectors really make a positive contribution at this point in time. The provinces seem to be doing okay with year-on-year capex spending of something like 12% in the third quarter. But the municipalities continue to be subpar, at least in terms of the feedback we get. And then, of course, there is this remarkable development in the mining sector already throughout last year, but gathering momentum as we speak. And that cannot be doing any good to the construction industry, which also has a sizable exposure to mining specifically. So all these factors added together, it is not a surprise that the rising confidence of the past year in this sector it became interrupted in the manner that it is shown in this particular survey.
When you talk about the province and the municipalities case, is there something to be said for the fact that because of inefficiencies, maybe administrative inefficiencies and bureaucracy, there should be more being done? In other words, jobs, the money's there, the projects are there, they've been rubber stamped, but for whatever reason, the actual construction is not taking place. Is that a valid point?
Lindsay, you're far too kind in the language that you're using, but we are on air, so I can understand that you express yourself as guardedly as you do. One can express it much more strongly, I think. There is simply not enough of a performance at these levels, for which reason we see the construction sector struggling as it is.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Lindsay, being diplomatic there, on the one hand, you've got private sector in focus as well, and that putting the emphasis on government spending, or highlighting the lack of government spending that we should be seeing very much more so. I mean, private sector underperforming. Let's take a look at the pressure points that still exist there.
Well, the irony, of course, is that the public sector parastatals are doing well. And the government has an enormous infrastructure plan that's available. But as Lindsay indicated, in terms of municipalities and also ultimately provinces, there could be much more done. And now when it comes to the private sector, we have substantial strain. When we hear about the capex cutbacks that have been announced so far, that is of a magnitude that I think will remain a substantial drag on this particular sector in the new year as well.
Looking at the private sector now, here's another one for you, Kees. Because of the competition, and isn't competition fantastic because it's great for the consumer, it's great for the end user, the customer. But is there also a case here that jobs aren't getting done because people say, wait a second, I simply can't make money with these wafer-thin margins, and if I get one thing wrong, then I'm going to lose money, so I'm not going to go ahead with this private sector work?
Very much so, Lindsay. We take the indication that employment levels still fell in the fourth quarter, and the indication for the first quarter this year is that employment levels in this sector will continue to decline. It's got everything to do with the level of construction activity, and although it is still growing, it is still expanding, it is simply not expanding fast enough to occupy the existing labor force. So for that reason, we see that shrinking taking place.
What kind of trends do you see this opening up in the construction sector? Because some would say where you've got, an environment like this and, this making it tough to do business for many operations, we may well see a trend of consolidation kick in.
Yes. In the course of last year, there was growing confidence of things starting to improve, starting in small ways in the provinces. There was even some hope that the municipalities would be kicking in. And of course, the mining sector could make a contribution. But as the year unfolded, something quite different has come into focus. And then, of course, not forgetting this main government plan that remains talked about, that continues to be very much the focus of the ANC post-Bloemfontein, if you listen to Ramaphosa and Zuma. So under these circumstances, there is on the one hand a lot of positive being aired, but on the other hand, we have to be realistic as to what we are encountering. As much as at local government level, and then specifically in the mining sector, this is far from finished. And until such time that we have better understanding, the construction industry is not going to get anything positive out of this.
You say in your conclusion here, Kees, you say the following, I'll read it to you. The slight drop in confidence suggests that the recovery in the construction sector recorded for most of the year moderated somewhat in 2012. The recovery did not come to a complete standstill, but continued at a weaker tempo. And you almost suggest in another comment after that the same sort of situation may prevail in 2013. Is there anything that might sort of come out of nowhere and suddenly we get a pickup or scupper the relatively benign growth rate that you're expecting?
The anchor, the carrier of the system are the public corporations, Eskom, Transnet, Senrail. If it wasn't for those contracts, it would be a totally different situation. We can hope, against hope, that the greater infrastructure plans of the government suddenly start to kick in, and there remain people who express such hopes. However, you specifically find among the larger construction companies that they suggest tenders are not even going out, and they fundamentally question the human capacity in the public sector to handle this. So yes, there remains hope. As there remains hope in the mining sector that there will be a quick resolution to what we see. But I'm not focused on that.
Okay. Kees, we'll leave it on a note of hope, but thanks very much for popping in this lunchtime to talk about the Construction Confidence Index just released. Kees Boekermans is a consulting economist at FNB.